It all started on a chilly November evening in 1992 when Linda Harper, a 34-year-old single mother, and her 7-year-old son, Tommy, set out on what was supposed to be a routine drive along Oregon's Highway 101. The fog hung low over the coastal road, reducing visibility to mere feet, and the headlights of their old sedan barely cut through the dense mist. Linda was known to be careful and punctual, and Tommy, clutching his favorite stuffed rabbit, chatted excitedly about seeing their relatives in Portland for Thanksgiving. Yet somewhere along that winding stretch of highway, their journey abruptly came to a mysterious halt. By midnight, when neither Linda nor Tommy had arrived at their relative's home, concern quickly turned to panic. Friends and extended family tried calling their phones, but there was no answer, just dead air. The next morning, when they still hadn't returned, Linda's brother reported them missing. Police arrived at the last known location, a small rest stop where Linda's car had been seen earlier that evening. What they found there deepened the mystery. The car was parked neatly, the doors locked, and personal belongings like Linda's purse and Tommy's backpack still inside. There were no signs of struggle, no skid marks, nothing that suggested what had happened. The highway itself offered little clarity. Highway 101, with its steep cliffs and dense forests lining either side, had claimed lives in the past, but usually through accidents that left wreckage. Here, there was no accident site, no trace of skid marks, and no witness reporting a crash. Search parties scoured the surrounding forest and the coastal cliffs below, but the thick fog and treacherous terrain made the search almost impossible. Days turned into weeks, and still nothing. It was as if Linda and Tommy had simply vanished into thin air, swallowed by the fog that seemed almost alive, hiding a secret no one could reach. Rumors quickly spread through the local community. Some neighbors speculated that they might have run away, although those who knew Linda dismissed the idea. She loved her son more than anything, and Tommy was known for his attachment to his routines and home. Others whispered more sinister possibilities, a stranger on the highway, perhaps a predator lying in wait, could have forced them off the road. Law enforcement pursued every tip, but every lead seemed to evaporate into the dense, misty Oregon night. The more authorities investigated, the more the case seemed to slip through their fingers like sand. Meanwhile, the Harper family was left in a state of anguish, clinging to hope while grappling with despair. Posters went up along the highway, and media outlets covered the disappearance extensively, hoping someone, anyone, might have seen Linda and Tommy. Yet every call that came in was either a dead end or a false lead. Days stretched into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. The disappearance of Linda and Tommy became one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries of the Oregon coast, a puzzle that seemed impossible to solve, leaving the community and family trapped in a nightmare they could not wake from. Once the disappearance of Linda and Tommy Harper was reported, local law enforcement sprang into action, but they were immediately met with challenges. The foggy, rugged terrain along Highway 101 made traditional search efforts nearly impossible. Officers organized ground searches, combing the forest floor and scouring the cliffs with flashlights and trained dogs. The dogs picked up Linda's scent near the rest stop, but within a short distance, the trail inexplicably disappeared. It was as if she and Tommy had simply dissolved into the mist, leaving no trace behind. Every attempt to follow leads only deepened the sense of mystery surrounding the case. Investigators also canvassed the small towns along the highway, knocking on doors and questioning anyone who might have seen them. Witnesses recalled spotting their car earlier in the evening, but no one could confirm seeing the pair after they left the rest stop. A few residents mentioned a suspicious older model pickup truck that seemed to be following them that night, but no one had a license plate or a clear description of the driver. Theories swirled, and each tip, no matter how small, had to be treated with caution. Officers began to suspect that foul play was involved, yet without a body or concrete evidence, the case remained frustratingly elusive. As the days passed, the investigation expanded to include aerial searches and coordination with neighboring counties. Helicopters swept the rugged coastline, while dive teams combed nearby rivers and coves. Every shadow, every ripple of water became a potential clue. Authorities even enlisted volunteers from the community, asking them to search the dense forests with flashlights and maps. Despite tireless efforts, nothing surfaced. No wreckage, no footprints, no evidence at all to indicate what had become of the mother and child. The case began to baffle even seasoned detectives, earning a reputation as one of Oregon's most confounding disappearances. Meanwhile, detectives dug into Linda Harper's background, looking for any possible reason she might have left willingly. Interviews with family and friends revealed nothing unusual. Linda was a devoted mother, well liked in the community, and had no history of threats or suspicious contacts. Tommy, known for his playful curiosity and routines, would never have willingly vanished into the night. Investigators also revisited old cases of missing persons along the same highway, trying to identify any patterns or connections, but so far, nothing matched the Harper case. Every lead seemed promising at first, but dissolved like fog under the morning sun, leaving only frustration and growing fear. As the investigation dragged on, the community began to feel the weight of uncertainty. The highway, once just a route through Oregon's coastal beauty, became a place of whispered fears and late-night speculation. Residents avoided driving it at night, haunted by the thought that something terrible had happened on that stretch of road. Detectives reviewed every piece of evidence repeatedly, hoping a detail might have been overlooked. A reflection in a window, a tire mark in the mud, a passing vehicle, but the trail remained cold. Each passing day, without answers, only deepened the mystery and tightened the grip of fear around everyone connected to the Harpers. As weeks turned into months, the disappearance of Linda and Tommy Harper gave rise to a swirl of rumors that seemed to grow as wild as the forest lining Highway 101. Locals whispered about strangers seen lurking along the coastal road late at night, and some claimed to have glimpsed a mysterious figure near the rest stop where the Harper's car had been left. Every small sighting fueled speculation, and soon, almost everyone in the town had their own theory about what might have happened. From innocent accidents to sinister schemes, the rumors only added to the fog of uncertainty already enveloping the case. One persistent theory suggested that Linda might have taken Tommy and run, attempting to escape some unknown threat. Though plausible to some outsiders, those who knew her scoffed at the idea. Linda had been a devoted mother, careful and conscientious, and Tommy was deeply attached to his routines and his home. The thought of her abandoning her child seemed unimaginable. Yet the theory lingered, whispered in hushed tones at diners, gas stations, and local schools. Even police officers privately admitted that they had considered every possibility, no matter how unlikely. Because the Harper's disappearance, defied conventional explanation. Others feared a darker possibility, that a predator had been stalking the coastal highways, waiting for the right moment to strike. In the early 1990s, Oregon had seen reports of violent crimes along remote stretches of road, and some believed the Harpers had fallen victim to such a predator. Sightings of an older, model pickup truck that seemed to follow them only fueled these fears. Theories ranged from opportunistic crime to premeditated abduction, with each new tip hinting at something more sinister than the last. Every potential lead carried an air of dread, leaving the community uneasy and constantly watching over their shoulders. The media only amplified the speculation. Local radio stations reported every anonymous tip they received, many of which were impossible to verify. Some callers claimed to know exactly what had happened, hinting at hidden secrets and long-buried crimes. Newspapers printed interviews with neighbors who insisted they had seen strange activity near the highway in the weeks leading up to the disappearance. Even after decades, these reports became part of the town's collective memory, and the story of Linda and Tommy Harper took on a life of its own as both cautionary tale and local legend. Meanwhile, the Harper family struggled to separate fact from fiction. Every time a new rumor surfaced, hope and despair collided in equal measure. Could Linda and Tommy have survived somewhere, waiting to be found? Or were they victims of something far darker, hidden in plain sight? The unknown gnawed at the edges of daily life, haunting friends, neighbors, and investigators alike. The theories, both innocent and chilling, became threads in a tangled web of mystery, threads that no one could untangle, leaving the truth frustratingly out of reach. After more than 2 decades of dead ends, the Harper case seemed frozen in time, until an unexpected discovery in 2018 reignited the investigation. A demolition crew had been contracted to tear down an old, abandoned warehouse near Highway 101, just a few miles from the rest stop where Linda and Tommy's car had last been seen. The building had sat unused for years, its windows boarded and walls crumbling, largely forgotten by the town. No one anticipated that beneath its dusty floorboards, the answers to a decades-old mystery were waiting silently, like a trapdoor to the past. As the crew began their work, moving heavy machinery across the warehouse's foundation, something unusual caught the attention of one of the workers. Among the rubble and dirt, there were fragments of objects that seemed oddly out of place. Children's shoes, a small backpack, and what appeared to be a faded jacket. The worker felt a chill run down his spine. There was an instinctive sense that these items weren't just old debris. Authorities were called immediately, and within hours, forensic teams were on site, carefully examining the scene. The discovery was startling, not only because of the nature of the objects, but because of their proximity to where the Harpers had vanished 26 years earlier. Investigators meticulously combed the site, brushing aside decades of dust and decay. They uncovered more personal belongings hidden beneath layers of rubble, items that had clearly been placed there intentionally. A broken wristwatch, a small toy, and fragments of clothing were carefully documented, bagged, and sent for forensic analysis. The sense of eeriness grew with each discovery. For years, locals had driven past this warehouse without giving it a second thought, never realizing that it might have been the final resting place of the missing mother and child. Every piece of evidence hinted at a calculated effort to conceal something terrible. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town, reawakening the memory of a tragedy that many had tried to forget. Families, neighbors, and former investigators who had long given up hope returned to the story with renewed interest, questioning how a building that had been so visible to the public could hide such a secret for so long. Experts speculated about how the remains and belongings had survived decades, wondering what kind of person could commit such a crime and bury it in a place so close to public eyes, yet remain undetected. The questions multiplied, each one more unsettling than the last, as the investigation moved into uncharted territory. Detectives began piecing together timelines, mapping ownership records of the warehouse, and interviewing anyone who had been in or around the building in the early 1990s. Memories faded, but hints emerged. Former employees recalled seeing suspicious activity. Anonymous calls suggested someone knew what had happened, and a few locals admitted they had always felt uneasy about the abandoned building. The new lead had reopened a Pandora's box of clues, fears, and possibilities. What had once seemed like a hopeless cold case was now alive with the potential to finally reveal the truth, but also to expose the darkness that had hidden in plain sight for over a quarter of a century. As forensic teams carefully excavated the abandoned warehouse, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Every inch of the floor was meticulously sifted, every layer of debris carefully removed, revealing a hidden structure beneath, a shallow pit, long covered and forgotten. Inside, scattered among dirt and broken floorboards, were fragments of human remains. The air was heavy with the unspoken realization that what had been buried here was not just old debris, but evidence of a tragedy that had been deliberately concealed for over 2 decades. The discovery immediately confirmed suspicions. The mystery of Linda and Tommy Harper was far darker than anyone had imagined. Among the pit's contents were personal items that sent chills down the spines of everyone on site. Tommy's small shoes, once bright and playful, were worn and dusty, lying near fragments of clothing that had been carefully preserved in the dirt. Linda's faded jacket was tucked close, as if someone had tried to shield her. A broken wristwatch, stopped at an unknown hour, seemed almost like a silent witness to the night their lives had been stolen. Each item told a fragment of a story of lives abruptly ended and hidden, and the scene made it clear that the Harpers had not simply disappeared. They had been taken, and someone had gone to great lengths to ensure that the world would never find them. Dental records and DNA testing soon confirmed the unthinkable. The remains were indeed those of Linda Harper and her young son, Tommy. The announcement sent shockwaves through the community, reopening wounds that had long begun to heal, or at least fade. Families, neighbors, and even former investigators were forced to confront the grim reality that the mystery they had speculated about for years was not only real, but far more horrifying than anyone had imagined. The discovery transformed what had been a cold case into a tangible, haunting evidence of evil, hidden so carefully that it had gone unnoticed for a quarter of a century. The warehouse, once a forgotten relic of the past, became the focal point of a renewed investigation. Every detail, no matter how small, was scrutinized. Investigators documented the position of each item, reconstructed the pit, and traced every possible lead that could indicate who was responsible. It was clear that whoever had committed the crime had planned it meticulously, burying the bodies beneath a structure that no one would think to search, hiding the lives of a mother and her child under the cover of time and decay. The chilling precision of the act suggested a darkness that extended beyond a moment of impulse, a cold and calculated effort to erase all traces of a horrific crime. Even as authorities continued to work the site, the questions only multiplied. How had the perpetrator gone unnoticed for so long? Who could commit such an atrocity in a community that prided itself on its safety and neighborly trust? And most haunting of all, what clues, if any, had been left behind that might finally reveal the identity of the person responsible? Each new piece of evidence seemed to answer some questions while raising even more, deepening the sense of fear and suspense that had haunted the case for decades. The discovery had given the world a glimpse into the terrible truth, but it also made it painfully clear that the story was far from over. With the remains of Linda and Tommy Harper finally uncovered, the investigation entered a new, more intense phase. Detectives combed through decades of property records, trying to trace every owner of the abandoned warehouse near Highway 101. They discovered a rotating cast of tenants and owners over the years, some of whom had passed through without leaving a trace, while others had a history of shady dealings. Each new name raised more questions than answers. Who had the means, motive, an opportunity to hide a mother and child for so long? And more importantly, why had no one suspected anything in all those years? Authorities began interviewing former tenants and neighbors, piecing together a timeline of who had been near the warehouse during the early 90s. Several former employees recalled seeing boxes being moved in and out of the building at odd hours, but none had suspected anything sinister. Others mentioned strange noises, fleeting shadows, or even a pungent smell that would occasionally drift from the warehouse. Each memory was fragmented and unreliable, yet when combined, they painted a disturbing picture. Someone had operated in plain sight, carefully concealing evidence while the world looked the other way. The more the detectives dug, the more it seemed that the killer had not only been patient, but extraordinarily meticulous. Forensic experts examined the pit and surrounding debris for additional clues. Tiny fibers, traces of paint, and subtle markings on the floorboards suggested that the bodies had been placed there with extreme caution. The positioning of Linda and Tommy's belongings hinted at a deliberate arrangement, almost as if the perpetrator wanted to send a silent, mocking message. Investigators speculated that the killer might have been someone familiar with both the victims and the warehouse itself. This raised chilling possibilities. Could the abductor have been someone within the community, someone whose presence had been so ordinary that no one questioned it for years? The mystery deepened as detectives explored potential motives. Robbery seemed unlikely. Nothing of value had been taken. Revenge? Perhaps, but no documented disputes could explain the level of cruelty involved. Random violence. The precision and planning suggested otherwise. With each theory, the case became even more confounding. Authorities also revisited other unsolved crimes along the Oregon coast from that era, looking for patterns or connections. Some reports of missing persons and suspicious activity appeared to overlap with the timeline of Linda and Tommy's disappearance, but nothing definitive could link these incidents. Every lead seemed tantalizingly close, yet frustratingly out of reach. As the investigation stretched on, public fascination and fear intensified. Residents along Highway 101 revisited their memories of the 90s, recalling moments that now seemed significant. A figure seen at the edge of the woods, a light flickering in the abandoned warehouse, or even a stray vehicle parked at odd hours. Media coverage brought renewed attention to the case, and tips flooded in from all corners of the state. But despite the flurry of activity, the ultimate question remained unanswered. Who had committed this horrifying crime? And why had they managed to stay hidden for so long? With each passing day, the sense of dread grew, leaving the community and investigators suspended in a haunting state of uncertainty. Even after the shocking discovery of Linda and Tommy Harper's remains, the story refused to offer closure. Investigators were left with fragments of answers, but no concrete identity of the person responsible. The very fact that the crime had gone undetected for 26 years suggested a chilling level of cunning. Who could commit such a calculated act and vanish into the shadows of the community without leaving a trace? Every possibility, from someone they knew personally to a complete stranger, was weighed, but each lead seemed to dissolve under scrutiny, leaving only the unsettling reality that the killer might have been closer than anyone had imagined. Residents along Highway 101 found themselves haunted by memories that now seemed sinister. A faint light in a distant window, a fleeting figure among the trees, or even the sound of tires crunching on gravel. Every ordinary moment became a potential clue in hindsight. The quiet highway, once a familiar route, now carried an almost supernatural weight. Those who had grown up in the area admitted they sometimes avoided the road after dark, feeling the lingering presence of a tragedy that had left its mark on the very land. The fear was subtle yet pervasive, a reminder that evil can linger where it is least expected. The Harper family, while finally able to mourn with some confirmation, was left with more questions than answers. Why Linda and Tommy? What had led someone to commit such a horrific act? And most importantly, would justice ever be served after so many years? Every new lead reopened old wounds, forcing them to relive the terror and uncertainty that had haunted them for decades. The emotional toll of the unanswered questions was immense, leaving a sense of helplessness alongside the relief of finally knowing what had happened. The story of their disappearance had transformed from a cold case into a permanent shadow over the family's life. Meanwhile, law enforcement faced a formidable challenge. The evidence, while compelling, was decades old and fragile. Witness memories had faded, physical traces were minimal, and the perpetrator, if still alive, could have moved far from the area. Detectives revisited interviews, reanalyzed forensic material, and even considered unconventional leads. But the more they delved, the more it seemed that the truth was buried not just in the warehouse, but in layers of secrecy, fear, and time. Every effort to reconstruct the events of that night revealed more questions than solutions, leaving the mystery suspended like a dark cloud over the town. The chilling reality was that some questions might never be answered. Even with the bodies uncovered and the timeline reconstructed, the motive, the identity of the perpetrator, and the exact circumstances of night remained hidden. The case became a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can lurk unnoticed within a seemingly ordinary community. As investigators, family, and neighbors grappled with the enormity of the crime, it became clear that the highway, the abandoned warehouse, and the lives of Linda and Tommy Harper were now forever entwined in a story of tragedy, suspense, and lingering fear that refused to fade with time. 26 years after that foggy November night, the mystery of Linda and Tommy Harper's disappearance was finally brought to light. But the answers only deepened the horror. A mother and her child, once vanished without a trace, had been hidden in plain sight, buried beneath a decaying warehouse, their lives stolen and secrets kept for decades. The discovery confirmed the tragedy, yet the most pressing questions remained unanswered. Who was capable of such cruelty? Why them? And could the person responsible still be out there, watching, waiting, or living among the very community that had mourned and feared for so long? The abandoned highway and the warehouse became more than just locations. They became symbols of a nightmare that refused to end. Locals reported feeling uneasy along the fog-laden stretches of road, hearing whispers in the wind, or seeing fleeting shadows in the corner of their eyes. Every ordinary sight now seemed tinged with dread, as if the tragedy itself had left a lingering presence, a reminder that evil can hide anywhere, even in plain view. The story of Linda and Tommy Harper became a permanent scar on the landscape, a chilling testament to how life can change in an instant and how darkness can remain concealed for years. For the Harper family, the answers brought both relief and anguish. They could finally mourn with some certainty, yet they were still left with an unshakable question. How could someone commit such a crime and remain hidden for decades? The absence of justice gnawed at their hearts, a silent torment that no discovery could fully erase. Each day, the pain of the unknown mingled with the sorrow of loss, leaving them with the haunting knowledge that the full story might never be revealed. And for the rest of the world, the case serves as a grim warning. Life can be fragile, and evil can exist where it is least expected. The story of Linda and Tommy Harper reminds us that some mysteries, no matter how long forgotten, can resurface with terrifying clarity. What was hidden for decades may one day emerge, forcing us to confront the unimaginable. As the fog rolls over Oregon's Highway 101, and as the winds whisper through the coastal forests, one fact remains certain: the lives of Linda and Tommy Harper were taken too soon, and the shadow of their disappearance continues to haunt all who dare to remember. The truth was finally found, but so too was the chilling realization that some mysteries never
If you
truly
liked this
end.
video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.